Alright, so today I have a pretty sweet game, as well as one particular aspect that I want to talk about. It's sort of an aspect about playing Magic in general, and something I think is underappreciated in Commander specifically. So in this game I'm playing Silas Kraum, rather than Ludwig from last game, versus Rashmi Eternity's Crafter. I decided to switch back to Kraum from, again, way back a long time ago, because I found that I wasn't able to close the game fast enough, and Kraum certainly does that. And while it doesn't draw cards as often as Ludwig does, it also doesn't draw my opponent's cards, so I think it's probably better in general, which is, of course, why you see it more often in top lists. Alright, so I have an opening hand of a few lands, Shadow of Doubt, Ophiomancer, and Gitaxian Probe. There's a couple different ways Rashmi could go. It could either go really competitive control, or it could be Elf Ball, or something in between, but I think this is generally fair game against most builds of it. And I am on the draw. Alright, so I don't actually run out the probe turn 1. The reason being, there's nothing I'm really looking to draw right now, and there isn't much that I'm going to be doing that I need to change my decisions based off what's in my opponent's hand. So it's better for me to wait until I can get a clearer picture of what decisions I need to make before I actually do that. I'm going to keep up Shadow of Doubt just in case of fetch lands, wood elves, Farseek, etc. Instead of those things, my opponent passes back, fine by me. I'm just going to cycle Shadow of Doubt right now, drawing Electrolyze. And here I'm going to actually cast the Probe. I now have 3 cards in my hand that I could play this turn cycle, and I might want to keep up Electrolyze if my opponent has Oracle of Moldiah, for example, or something along those lines, or I could play Ophiomancer. And here's where what I want to talk about really comes into play, because that is information. My opponent's hand here is Aetherize, Dissipate, Primeval Bounty, Rites of Replication, Stunt Double, and Temple of the False God. And knowing that my opponent has these exact cards is going to force me to play very differently this game than I would otherwise have, and that's actually why I have this notepad window open here so I can keep track of what I know about. Now normally we'd have this revealed tab over here, but Magic Online doesn't show that for cards that simply reveal the hand like Gitaxian Probe, so I won't have that going for me. Okay, so given that my opponent's hand is this, there's nothing I need to Electrolyze, nothing I need to desperately capsize. They might cast Rashmi, but neither of my cards will deal with that anyway, so I'm just going to run out the Ophiomancer. Better than Silas since I have no artifacts in the graveyard and I can start getting a little bit more damage up earlier. Now unfortunately for me, my opponent does draw an untapped land here that is not Temple of the False God, which will allow them to play that Stunt Double, but I was willing to play Ophiomancer into that, despite the fact that I knew that they had it because I had Electrolyze. So while they might get a 1/1 Death Touching Snake out of the deal, I'll be killing that and drawing a card, which is fine by me. Drawing Toxic Deluge, relatively nice. Now this is still a tempo-based deck, so I'm going to get in damage where I can. And here, they unfortunately can play Temple of the False God into Primeval Bounty, and there's not much I can do about this. I don't really have an answer to it immediately, and this card's very annoying. If you haven't seen it before, whenever they cast a creature spell, they get a 3/3 beast. Whenever they cast a non-creature spell, one of their creatures gets larger, and whenever a land enters the battlefield, they gain 3 life. So very annoying abilities for a tempo-based deck to play against, or even a control-based deck to play against. So both my deck's modes are kind of going to be shut down by this card. Now I have a temporary answer to it in Capsize, but I don't have a permanent answer, so that's what I'm going to be looking for a major portion of this game. With 5 mana, I don't really have much else to do, so I'm just going to play Kraum and smash them with it. This is getting in under the Aetherize, under the Dissipate, and now we're down to 3 cards that we're aware of: Aetherize, Dissipate, and Rite of Replication. And we'll see how that works out. Here they're going to draw Reclamation Sage after playing a land. They're just doing this to get out a beast, it seems like, not actually to destroy anything. And now I know their full hand here still, so I'm not going to simply attack into the Aetherize. There's really no point to doing that, it just sets me back on tempo. What I'm going to do instead is Innocent Blood, killing my snake and their beast. My snake will just regenerate thanks to Ophiomancer and hold up Fact or Fiction for their turn. They play out Rashmi. Now they've drawn the island, so now they have access to Dissipate and Rite of Replication on future turns, but for now they've just kept up Aetherize. And again, this would be a time when I would absolutely simply attack and get tempoed very badly when they get the draw off Rashmi, and put 3 counters on something and return all my creatures to my hand. But because I know that, I'm not going to just attack into it. Instead, I will just Factor Fiction end step. And this finds him and Remand, as well as Bloodchief Ascension and a pair of lands. I'm planning at some point to Yawgmoth's Will, so I want to make sure I'm going to continue hitting my land drops to get the most possible value off of that. I could him here and just hope to hit the cards that I care about and take the Remand as well, and maybe that would have been better, but for this game I decided to go with Pile 2. Also worth noting, I'm fully planning to Deluge next turn, so we'll see where that goes. So I'm going to take a land, so I'm going to Toxic Deluge here, and in response my opponent makes a very good play, which is that they just cast Aetherize. Now obviously there's no creatures attacking, but what they can do here is they can just put 3 counters on Rashmi, and I didn't really consider that they could play this out of combat. So they no longer have Aetherize, and they're going to get the Rashmi flip, and Rashmi, amazingly, is going to flip Void Shatter. So my Toxic Deluge will be countered, and I'll draw a card off Kraum instead. I don't particularly mind this. Without killing Rashmi, it's not that great. I didn't really want to get rid of Ophiomancer either. Ophiomancer is great value, as you will see this game. But that's kind of annoying, specifically because it exiles Toxic Deluge. And that's something I forget about for quite a while, that Toxic Deluge will not be in my graveyard after this moment. So we'll keep track of how many of my decisions are based off that fact. Now Primeval Bounty makes Reclamation Sage huge as well, but thankfully I draw Duretti off of the Kraum trigger, so I can make a construct and start blocking my opponent's creatures, despite the fact that they're all very large, and I'm going to run out Bloodchief Ascension. I could attack here, but they could just attack everything into Duretti, and that would be the right play. I don't really expect my opponent to do that, because they would almost certainly involve their Rashmi dying, but I just want to keep Duretti protected, because it's going to be very key to surviving this game against the Primeval Bounty. Here they're going to draw Oracle of Moldiah, and here's the second burst of information that I'm going to get, because after they play Oracle of Moldiah, I will know every card that they draw for the rest of the game. Rashmi here will reveal Consecrated Sphinx. It's certainly good to know about, since I'm going to need to hold up at least the capsize for it to prevent them from drawing 2 on my turn. And here they play an Evolving Wilds off the top of their library. Okay, so with their top of the library revealing Propaganda, they're just going to crack Evolving Wilds. They don't really want Propaganda right now, which makes sense since I only have 1 real attacker that matters. And now they're going to show Sylvan Caryatid instead, and cast Rite of Replication targeting Reclamation Sage. Kraum triggers, drawing me a land, and Reclamation Sage will kill Bloodchief Ascension, which is kind of an interesting choice, since it's quite a ways from going online, and even then they have the lands to counteract it off Primeval Bounty. I'm not sure if I agree with this, but it certainly makes their Death-Touching Snake much larger as well. So Bloodchief goes down, and they're just going to swing into Duretti. Certainly the right choice for them, but because I was able to hold back Kraum, I can make it a very unprofitable attack by just trading snakes. Mine regenerates, killing their beast with Kraum, and then I can just block the Reclamation Sage with the token. So Duretti takes no damage, I lose 1 defender, and they lose a number of creatures. So now I feel safe to attack in with Kraum, for one particular reason. I have forgotten at this point of the game that Toxic Deluge was exiled. I'm fully intending to Deluge for 6 this turn, knowing that my opponent only has Dissipate, which they can't cast right now, and Consecrated Sphinx, which I can capsize. But because that's not the case, this turn goes in a kind of unexpected direction for me. So I cast Yawgmoth's Will, play a land, fetch for a Sunken Hollow, tap 3 mana, realize I don't have Toxic Deluge, untap 3 mana. Now instead I'm going to branch out and just get some value. So first things first, I definitely want to him my opponent here. It's going to take out the 2 cards that I know of in their hand, both of which I definitely don't want them to have. After that I can probe them. Now technically I should have done this in the reverse order, because I would have gotten another additional card in my hand that I could have chosen what to do with. But in this case it doesn't really change much, since I draw Pirate Spellbomb, which I definitely have the mana to use, and certainly will use. First things first, Innocent Blood, get rid of my snake, which will just come back, and get rid of their copy of Reclamation Sage, and then Pirate Spellbomb comes down, but it doesn't actually activate its own ability. Instead, I'm going to use Duretti to kill Rashmi with it. 5/6 Rashmi is really annoying. I know that they're going to draw Sylvan Caryatid, which is going to at least get them a beast. I don't want them to be also drawing cards off of that. So Duretti kills Rashmi, and unfortunately I don't have Pirate Spellbomb in the graveyard, but that's sort of the price I have to pay for making this play. Anyway, back to my opponent's turn. My opponent casts the Sylvan Caryatid that we knew about, taps out to play Rashmi. I draw a Swamp off of Kraum, and passes turn, with Blue Sun Zenith on top. Alright, my plays here are pretty straightforward. They do have Blue Suns on top, it's going to draw them a lot of cards, but I can't interact with that right now. So I just have to keep playing my own cards as though that were not going to happen. Playing Baleful Strix, thankfully that's an artifact, so I can kill Rashmi with it again. Now I have drawn Thoughtseize, obviously they have no cards in their hand, but they're going to draw a lot of cards that will be nice in the near future. Play out Bitter Blossom, so I'm going to just pass turn there. I don't want to attack in with Kraum here because they have very many attackers, and I want to keep Duretti alive because Duretti keeps getting me value. Now here's where the resilience that I've built into this deck really starts to shine. I have a Death Toucher that's going to come back every turn. I have a Death Toucher that I can keep recasting for 2 more mana each time, and I have a 4/4. And I have something that makes 1/1 blockers, and I have something that makes 1/1 flyers. So regardless of how many beasts they're going to be getting off this, I have a decent chance of just fighting back with raw, resilient creatures, which is part of why all the permanents in this deck get so much value over time. Now my opponent makes, again, the absolutely correct play here, and just Blue Sun Zeniths for as much as possible during their main phase. Don't want to risk me drawing a counterspell. So they're going to draw 8 here. And because of Oracle, I see every card that they draw. So, let's check out what they've drawn. These 2 cards are gone. They had a Clever Impersonator on top. Alright, so after they play their island, this will be their hand. Clever Impersonator, Llanowar Elves, Negate, Zendikar's Royal, Garruk Wildspeaker, Vizier of Many Faces, and Psalm Simulacrum. Now it's easy to just be like, okay, they've drawn a lot of cards, I don't really want to put the effort into remembering what they are, it probably won't be relevant, it probably won't affect my decisions, and that's definitely something that people do all the time in multiplayer. And I think that if you have the mental resources to put into remembering what their cards are, it is absolutely worth it, and I hope this game will prove it, as I'll be able to make a lot of my plays based on that knowledge and play a lot better for it. So my opponent plays out the island and chooses to not attack. I think they got sufficiently burned by the last attack that they just don't want to throw the resources into it. And I think that in this case that is totally wrong. They could attack with 5 creatures here and guarantee that they would take down Duretti. They would be left with most likely 2 beasts after that, but the Oracle is not worth the Duretti in this case, especially since in the process they would kill Ophiomancer or be left with a 3rd beast. So I think that they absolutely should have attacked here, and they just got burned by the last attack so hard that they didn't want to risk it, I suppose. Anyway, back to my turn. And I draw a young Pyromancer. So if I wasn't already putting out an infinite swarm of creatures that they just can't kill because they keep coming back, here's another way to do so. Duretti pluses. Pyromancer comes down. And instead of Thoughtseizing here, I'm actually going to capsize, buy back the Primeval Bounty, and Thoughtseize afterwards. Primeval Bounty is a kind of a crazy card. You've already seen that this has basically been 6 mana for like 8 beasts and 12 life and multiple lasting giant growths. This card is very, very hard to deal with in the long run, especially for a deck that does not have the tools to get rid of enchantments. So I'm going to use one of the few ways that Grixis can do that, which is returning to hand and then discarding from hand. Capsize buyback plus Thoughtseize. Now this is actually not as bad a play as it looks, because I get to keep the Thoughtseize and I get to make 2 tokens off of that, so it's not really any minus in value, and I don't really have any other cards to play, so I think this was totally the correct play, and my opponent comments on that as well, that it was probably the right thing to do here. Now this doesn't obviously change the cards that my opponent has in their hand, but the nice thing about knowing everything they had in their hand was that I could make this play confident that I wouldn't want to capsize anything later. Everything that they have right now is able to be dealt with. They can copy Kraum and attack Duretti with it, but I have the flying blockers already to deal with that. They can play Zendikar's Royal, but that's much less concerning than Primeval Bounty, and I obviously don't really care about Solemn or Garruk or Ladder Realms here. Critically, I definitely want to do this before they get to untap and be able to play Negate. So based on their hand, I was able to feel really confident in what this turn was going to look like. Kraum attacks in. Again, I can attack with my Fairy Rogue if they decide to copy Kraum, and with them at 12 commander damage, this is now a very real win condition. Step 1 for my opponent is going to be Garruk Wildspeaker. Makes sense, they get to untap some lands, and follow it up with a Zendikar's Royal. I'm not sure if I 100% agree with this. It's not necessarily very impactful. I might have opted for just replaying Rashmi here if possible. I haven't really counted their mana, but regardless, they're going to copy Kraum as expected and hold up Negate mana. So here they attack in with everything, and unfortunately for them it is a turn too late. I've gotten the tokens from Young Pyromancer, as well as the Fairy Rogues and Constructs, and I can absolutely take this attack with ease. Silas in this game is acting pretty much as just a repeatable removal spell with the Death Touch there, not really getting in. But after this attack they are left with slightly fewer creatures, whereas I've essentially only lost resources that are completely replaceable. Now unfortunately for me, I'm kind of drawing a continuous stream of lands here, so I have to time this capsize for it to matter, but I can't really do that because, as we are all aware, they have a Negate in their hand. So I'm going to be forced to deal with that fact. First things first, minusing Duretti to kill Kraum, obviously not a spell, so it cannot be negated. I'm just going to recast Silas and hold up Capsize. Take down Garruk with Kraum, since I don't want that sticking around for any appreciable length of time. Alright, my opponent plays the Swiftfoot Boots that we knew about, and follows that up with Embalming Vizier of Many Faces. Again, I'm not too concerned about this. We have the Fairy Rogue to block it, just like last time. They can equip it for the Hexproof, and I'm going to respond with Capsize here, which is honestly completely bait. Capsize isn't hugely useful against the sort of very value-heavy board that they have going on. So I fully intend that they will negate that, and they do. And interestingly, they don't choose to attack Duretti here. They've, at this point, I guess, identified that Kraum can be a very serious clog for them. Unfortunately for me, I draw more lands. I decide that regardless of their blocker here, I'm definitely just going to attack in and try to take them to 16 commander damage. Now, as it happens, they don't block Kraum, which leads me to wonder why they kept Kraum back. Maybe they just were trying to sort of bluff that they would. But they do block the Silas, which just lets me recast it since I had nothing better to do this turn anyway. My opponent hits 2 lands off the top here, triggering their Zendikar's Royal twice, and now casts their Clever Impersonator, making a copy of Bitter Blossom, which it seems to me that they're trying to stave off the damage from Kraum in a more consistent way than just getting their own Kraum. Again, seems like a solid choice. And then they're going to cast Solemn Simulacrum. Solemn will clear the top and incidentally find them in the exact same land, but they will now play Jace Beleren, minusing it to find a land. So now they now have exactly 1 island in hand, and they have Nissa Vastwood Seer on top of the library. Now, Nissa Vastwood Seer isn't too annoying, because I do have the Kraum to take her down, but if they have the Bitter Blossom up, she can just stay alive and keep getting value, and that's really what I want to prevent this game. So that's something that I'm going to have to deal with, and deal with fast. Now, fortunately, because I know it's coming, I'm actually given an opportunity to do so fairly soon here. I draw Inquisition of Kozilek, which immediately to me seems like it's going to not actually help that much. We have Inquisition targeting them, just reveals an island here, and they're going to play Nissa the turn they draw it, obviously. But it turns out that I can actually engineer a situation where it becomes an answer to Nissa. So first things first, Duretti's going to blow up the Swiftfoot Boots from their Kraum, so I can play Flametongue Kavu and destroy Kraum. And then I'm going to follow that up with attacking with Silas, Kraum, and 2 flyers. 2 flyers going at Jace just to take him off the board. Silas, I'm intending just to kill one of their creatures and then recast Silas. And Kraum is obviously for the clock. Now, I realize as I'm attacking that the play that they're going to make here is block with Solemn. And since they're going to block with Solemn, I actually can Inquisition main phase 2 and take the Nissa out of their hand. And that's exactly what happens. So Inquisition, which is great timing because they're now about to draw a counterspell. So if all this had gone through, or if I had chosen to not Inquisition or to Inquisition main phase 1, if I had not known that they had an island, for example, they would on this next turn have a Nissa backed with counterspell, which would be much harder for me to deal with. Anyway, Inquisition takes Nissa. I can't recast Silas this turn, but that's fine, because now they don't have much going on for them. They're going to spend their time recasting Rashmi here. And Rashmi with counterspell backup is kind of annoying, but thankfully for me, I still have Duretti, which is a very concise answer to their situation. They're going to attack into Duretti with everything, or rather with everything of marginal size that they don't want to lose. I'm going to trade with a few things, and trump block with some tokens. We're generating the Ophiomancer token again. You can see exactly how much value that's been getting this game, and draw a Mental Misstep. Unfortunately, not too useful here. That said, here's where things get really interesting. This is a turn where if I had not known about the counterspell, I might have done something that looks like a good play, but it actually isn't. They have exactly 1 flying blocker, and they have 20 commander damage, so it seems like all I would need to do is cast Silas, minus Duretti, kill their flying blocker, and hit them with Kraum to win. But since they have counterspell, they would counter the Silas, draw Mind's Dilation, have the blocker. Silas costs 2 more, and their situation is unchanged. So allowing them to counterspell here would actually be very detrimental to me, even though I'm not spending resources to do it. So rather, instead of that, I'm just going to attack them with Kraum, and keep up the status quo until I can kill their blocker without walking into a counterspell. So now they've drawn Mind's Dilation, and I believe they're just going to cast Mind's Dilation. Which they do. Rashmi will trigger, casting Sylvan Library off of that, and Kraum will trigger, drawing me Arcane Denial. Now, choosing to Arcane Denial here is kind of weird. Mostly what I'm trying to do is bait the counterspell, just to make sure I can win next turn. It turns out that they don't actually care about Mind's Dilation that much, so they will let the Arcane Denial go through, take the draw 2 instead. Play an island off the top, and now reveal Rapid Hybridization. Once again, they go for a big attack on Duretti. Not so big this time, since they've lost most of their big things that they can attack with. Snake blocks something, Ophiomancer eats a Elvish Mystic, and I chump with a couple tokens. Once again, the token generators showing their worth in this game. Here's kind of the critical turn. They're going to draw Rapid Hybridization off of Arcane Denial, as well as one other card that I will get to see, because of the Oracle still. I'm going to draw 1 card, and I have Mental Misstep. So what my opponent's going to do here, or rather what they could do, is during combat, Rapid Hybridization the Kraum, presuming that I kill their flying blocker. I can misstep it, and then they can counterspell back. But what actually happens is slightly different. First things first, I draw a Duress, which is huge. This takes away the possibility that they have of doing this during combat. I can force their hand main phase. And that's not something that I might otherwise do. Had I not known that they had blue removal, that's not really a common thing. I wouldn't necessarily have just Duress main phase under that assumption. For one thing, it allows them to play a counterspell and get more value off of Rashmi that way. So they've drawn 2 cards, the revealed section here revealing the card that I missed, which is Bounty of Alexa. So I now know their entire hand. They have Counterspell, Rapid Hybridization, Bounty, with Fyndhorn Elves on top, so that will be the card that they draw off Rashmi if she triggers this turn. And my opponent chooses to, in upkeep, Rapid Hybridization Kraum, which might have been a mistake for the reasons that I mentioned earlier. They could have waited until combat, that way I won't have a chance to recast it. And their plan here is presumably to say, okay, I'm going to Rapid Hybridization Kraum, you can recast it, but that'll take a lot of mana, and then I can counterspell that. In the meantime, I'm getting cards off Rashmi, searching with Sylvan Library, and I can maybe come back in this game. But since I have Mental Misstep, I can counter back with that and end the game here. My opponent mentioned in the chat that they had forgotten about Duretti here. I think they were just planning on building up flying blockers just to be a little bit more stable and dodge removal spells. And that's why they held the counterspell, because they didn't think it would matter this turn. But regardless, I'm now able to just destroy their fairy with Duretti and attack in, knowing their full hand is now Counterspell, Fintorn Elves, and Bounty of the Luxa. And that's exactly what's going to happen. They will concede here. So this was a really excellent game. Both of us, I think, fought through some pretty crazy stuff between the Primeval Bounty and all my token makers and the value that they were getting off of Rashmi flips and Zendikar's Royal and Oracle. But I think that it really shows you the value of knowing your opponent's hand, which seems like an obvious thing, but I think that it tends to be undervalued in multiplayer Commander, especially as I said earlier. I really don't think that I would have won this game had I not known what my opponent had going on. I was able to make much better decisions because of that, and furthermore, because my opponent didn't know what I had going on, they didn't really have that luxury of knowing what to hold counterspell for, knowing what was worth getting rid of. There was a point where I had 6 or so lands in hand, and they actually commented in the chat, "Oh, you have 7 cards in hand, this is going to go very badly for me." Where if they had known my hand, if I had had an Oracle up this whole game, they would know that they had leeway to put a lot more pressure on the board than they already did. I think they were playing very conservatively this game because they had that lack of knowledge. So with that, I hope this has convinced you to add Gitaxian Probe to all of your commander decks, and maybe value Oracle of Moldiah-like effects slightly less, although they're very good. They do have a significant and very real downside. Have a good night.